Welcome to the Guitar Builders Collective Chat, audio and visual podcast, a weekly discussion about all things guitar building and some random tangents as well, featuring members of the Guitar Builders Collective from all around the world. The Guitar Builders Collective is a like-minded group of individuals that have come together to share their experiences, knowledge, and inspiration for guitar building. Each week you can join us in the live YouTube chat or catch up at a later point. It's also available as audio where you'll miss out on seeing our lovely faces and some of the visuals we share along the way. You can also find the Guitar Builders Collective via our forum, over on Instagram where we share images of members' builds. We've got a thriving Facebook group. Great. Hello everyone.
Morning.
Hello.
We're here.
So look, we're coming from you from around the world as always. We were hoping to switch to this time for an Australian time to have Corey with us. Corey had a great suggestion for today, which was to catch up on the Jurgs Cup and reflect on it. But unfortunately, Corey, he is in the live chat. I can see him there, but he lives on the edge of the Australian rainforest and he streams from where he works, which is a place with a tin roof. I'm going to call it a tin roof, metal roof of some form. And it's raining really heavily. So basically we won't be able to hear him. So he'll just be there on mute. So instead of that, he's hiding in the chat. And if anyone else in the chat, hello, please feel free to join in with the chat as always. And can you also let me know, having a slight internet issue, I think. So I just want to check it's all streaming properly. But for those of you joining us on audio, you won't know who's here. So I'll just introduce you to a few people. We've got Glyn joining us from New Zealand, Mr. Glyn's Pickups.
Yeah.
And then we've got Brad from BB Guitars.
Howdy.
And Ray from Tasmaniak Guitars.
Hello.
Both of whom are in Australia. And then a special guest, a first-time person on here, Jamie, also known on Instagram and YouTube as Fatpotanga, which we'll ask you about in a minute. Hi, Jamie.
Hello. Yeah,
now, Jamie, like me, is UK-based. So, yeah, we're splitting around. We've got all our time zone changes at the moment, so it makes it really hard to get the American people on at the same time as well, unless someone gets up in the middle of the night or dead early in the morning. But we're going to have a few coming up which are shifting around at different times. If you like to join in live on the stream, definitely check out the playlist, which is in the video description. It's also in the audio description on the podcast. And on that, you can see the future 6 episodes stream time, so you can check when they all are. Great. So, Jamie, I can see you're wearing your Zola guitar top.
I am, and I'm the only one.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm the only one who got the memo.
It's not that we haven't got them.
They're in the wash.
For people that don't know, the Zola guitars, that the shirts were all designed by Mick, who sometimes joins us in the chat as well. They're in respect or in memory of Jürgen Zola. He was someone that's quite active in the forums when we first started the Guitar Builders Collective. In fact, he was there way before that, when everyone started mingling in social media and contacting each other. He was a real active member of it all. And unfortunately, he passed away a couple of years ago. But in honor of him, we as a group have a challenge each year where it's just a challenge to inspire you to build something, build an instrument in some way. And it absolutely doesn't have to be like a really strict competition type thing with deadlines, but we do have a yearly kind of timetable for it with a new theme that happens each year. We'll talk more about this a bit later on. It's just an encouragement for people to build along. Last year, we were building things that were basically with bits you had already, bits you had lying around. And then this year's theme is to use stuff bought from a hardware store. Although I'm not sure what you do call hardware stores in Australia. Yeah. Do we call them hardware stores in the UK? I'm doubting that now. Yeah.
I'll join you.
I think it's the Americans that have a funny name for it then. Glyn, do New Zealanders have a funny name for them?
No, and we've got the same chains as the Aussie guys have as well, pretty much. Didn't have Bunnings?
Yeah, I was actually going to say we don't call them hardware stores. We call them Bunnings.
Ah.
Yeah,
even if they're not Bunnings, yeah.
Even if they're not Bunnings, you still go under Bunnings.
Yeah, I'm always off to B&Q, even if it's a home base.
Yeah. Yeah, same thing.
So Jamie, look, one reason to get you on was obviously the quality of your guitars, which we'll talk about in a minute. But also, but one of the things I like about the Jurgs Cup and the Great Guitar Build-Off, which is the thing that sort of got us all together at the beginning, is that encouragement to get people to build their first guitars. And it's amazingly amount of quality instruments that have been built for people building their first guitars on it all. Was the Great Guitar Build-Off how you started building?
It was, yeah. I saw the first ever one and wanted to join in on that, and I wasn't able to. And then the next year I thought, I'm just going to do it. And I signed up before I could change my mind. And I decided I was going to do a full scratch build. I didn't want to do a kit or anything. And I just went ahead and did it based on everything I've seen. I thought it looked like really good fun, actually, and a really good community. And I liked the camaraderie, and it seemed like a really good laugh, but a way of having a go at something.
So that first year of watching people building, for anyone that doesn't know, that was during the first year of lockdowns during COVID. Crimson Guitars had this thing on their YouTube channel where they invited some other YouTubers to build guitars and share the process with people to watch along with at home. And that very quickly turned to people who weren't invited wanting to do it anyway. So
I actually preferred the build along to the actual main competition. I preferred seeing the people who weren't part of it. I found that much more inspiring and enjoyable.
So what have you got a background in that kind of woodworking and building or guitar playing that made you really want to do that?
Well, I've been playing, like most people, been playing guitar for years. I was in my first band at 14, playing pubs and clubs at 15. So I've had a long history of playing. And I always fancied doing it. And I kind of thinking around do I want a custom guitar at some point. And then I stumbled upon this bald-headed man with a tattoo on his head and a very, very posh voice. And it's kind of like, wow, he's so passionate about it. Then Fletcher Guitars in Australia, I remember watching them. And then the Great Guitar Build-Off. I thought, I'm going to have a go at this. But before then, I'd never adjusted a truss rod. I could intonate a guitar and things like that, but I've never used things like that. Never used a router before. But I have renovated a house, so I can plumb, I can do an electrics, I can do woodwork, I've built gates, I've built doors, so I'm practical. I've always have been practical. So I figured, what's the worst thing? As I'll mess up some wood or lose a finger.
Nice. A quick question then. What was the name of your first band?
Wind Cries Mary.
Oh, musical reference, like it.
Yeah.
Anyone else remember their first band names? Who can forget their first band names? Oh, everyone's going quiet. Ray's looking quiet.
Let's move on.
I actually had my first ever gig on tape. They recorded it.
Amazing.
So we had that, and then the 30th anniversary of it, me and two of the other guys got together and re-recorded the opening song for that and rejigged it and released it. That was quite cool to do.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Does that mean you're still in contact?
Yeah, still play with them, still have musical things. We actually started revisiting songs we wrote when we were 15.
I have
started re-recording them. So yeah, very much in contact.
Interesting. So Daniel, you're asking the question of how you got started, and I think the follow-on question would be: is it possible to stop?
No.
I think that's kind of rhetorical.
Yeah.
I tell you, I think I like the idea. Is it possible to stop? But sometimes I think about the fact that, I'm currently in the process of getting my old guitars and just selling them on eBay because I don't really use them anymore. Now I'm building. Like that love of the actual playing the guitar has sort of gone. Now I've gone into building, and I can't imagine anything will replace the building element. But who knows? Who knows what the future holds? Maybe 3D printing will take me on a whole new route.
I've found I only ever play the ones I've built. I've got loads of very, very nice guitars, but I only play the ones I've made.
Why is that? What makes you play them?
Because they play well. They're really good fun. My first build actually played was a really lovely guitar. I know it shouldn't be. There are cosmetic issues, but in fact, that's it there. But it just plays great. It sounds great. And, took it to a band rehearsal the other day, hooked up and played live with it for the first time recently. It was great fun.
I love that it's not just the kind of ownership of it that makes you want to play it, the fact that it actually plays well.
Yeah,
I mean, one thing I'll get onto with you a bit later on is with one of your builds, the white one that I can see in the background. I remember you kept refinishing it because you weren't happy with it. But in the photos, I thought it looked great. And I was like, obviously there's something that I can't see in the photos. But there's also that, I think when you're building something for yourself like that, you get that real perfectionist element.
Yeah. Well, there's also things that go wrong. You think, oh, crap, what can I do? So you just take it off and start again. And it's like, I think it was the one in the middle you can see there. That's fabric top. I redid the fabric on that twice because I wasn't happy with it, which was entertaining. But it's going to be.
Do you think I could ask you maybe to hold up one of yours?
Which one do you want?
Well, why don't we start with the first one you made? If that's not being too cheeky.
Not at all. That's it.
So for those of you who are listening on audio, I've linked to Jamie's Instagram in the description, so you'll be able to see photos of this. But this is a purple sort of finish on it.
Purple finish. It's based on. I've got a few Charvel Surfcasters, and I love them. And I thought I'll use that as a reference build because I'm familiar with them. It's kind of, in construction-wise, it's basically a Telecaster, isn't it? It's basically a thing bolted on something else, and I can reference it. So what I did was I tweaked the body shape and made it a little bit more how I wanted one. I also love Firebirds, so I did the raised, the carved bit in the middle because I do like texture and like shadows and things it casts. And I thought I'll have a crack at binding, so I doubled down a bit, and then I basically tried everything. So, like I said, there's a few bits wrong with the construction wise. There we go.
But you basically just went the whole hog on your very first build, didn't you?
Yeah, and I thought if it goes wrong, it goes wrong.
Yeah. I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I love that.
So many people just take it, go safely and gently, and look, you know what? That's a good and smart idea. But on the same hand, seeing someone just go full on and do, take all the difficult and tricky steps and roll it into their very first build. That's awesome. I love that.
Thank you. I mean, I recessed the Tune-O-Matic because I didn't want to bother with neck angles. So all the things that went wrong were router fails. So that pickup thingy there was basically the router slip. So I carved the wood and stuck it in. And I very foolishly, when I did the neck, this caused me such grief. But I thought, well, neck's basically just 3 straight lines, isn't it? So the end of my neck is angled to the bottom of the thing here. So, and then I routed out all the pickups before I'd actually set the neck in. So I spent ages buggering about twisting the neck a bit and redoing it, filling it and stuff. So everything went wrong is kind of cosmetic-y behind the scenes bit. But it intonates, there's no fret buzz, it plays beautifully. It plays really, really well. Feels nice neck, everything. So I was over the moon with it.
I mean, it looks great. That router fail has led to a really cool pickup surround that I think really mirrors the angle of the neck at the end of the fretboard. It really mirrors sort of the buying. It adds something to it that also, I think when I see P90s, I often think of a more vintage looking guitar, and that pickup surround reminds me of sort of Burns or Dan Electro instruments. I love it. Yeah,
well, I was going to stain it, and I thought, well, it actually ties in with the P90 if I don't, with the Mayplay used. So, yeah, very good.
One thing you said that I really liked was the idea that you would make a guitar in the style of a guitar you already like, sort of influenced by it. So you've got that as the reference point for when you're building.
Yeah, exactly. I thought if it goes wrong, I can measure things and look at things and tweak the body shape a little bit.
Yeah, that's really sensible, having that physical thing there to compare to, as opposed to just some drawings or something on the internet.
Yeah, exactly. So, do you want me to move on, or?
It's funny because one of the first guitars I made, like in the first 10, was based on a Charvel Surfcaster, and it was also
purple.
Yeah,
really great man, yeah. Great man.
Yeah, no, they're a great offset guitar. I mean, I don't know if you see them in the UK, but I haven't seen one for a long time.
They're very, very rare. I've got 3, and I've got a 12 string in a very, very rare red, and I shudder to think what it's worth, but it's they're.
Oh, they're worth something now.
Oh gosh, yeah. Worth a lot more than I paid for them anyway.
Yeah, right. Okay.
I'm just going to do a quick screen share of a Google search I've just done for them, because I'm not aware. I'm not sure I would have been able to picture what they look like. So what is it about these guitars then that you both like?
Yep.
Oh, Jamie's holding one of his up.
Oh, it's the offset thing. You know, I also like those. I used to gig with a Hohner JT60, I think it was. Again, offset body. And yeah, oh gosh, double neck.
That's mine, the red one. That's my 12.
Okay.
Yeah.
With lipstick pickups.
Yeah, lipstick's 12-string red. I've got as well. Yeah.
Because when they were mid-90s, early to mid-90s, weren't they?
Yes, mine are both first run, so they're kind of 94. I think they are 93.
Right.
94.
Right. The wrong time to be manufacturing that style of guitar, really.
Oh, without doubt. Yeah. And when Fender bought out Jackson and Hughes bought out Charvel, it was too close to certain Fender lines, so they discontinued them.
Ah, right. That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely got that 60s surf look to it, which obviously it's referencing.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the pictures. I wouldn't have guessed they were 90s guitars at all, but I guess 90s guitars are vintage guitars now.
Well,
So,
yeah.
okay.
The amount of gear I've got that's now vintage because I've just not sold it.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to ask, because I'm really into finishing, a lot about finishes. Why did you go for the purple stain?
I thought it looked good, basically. I just got a couple of stunning stains from Crimson. I was going to do a burst, and I thought, I'll do a purple burst. It was as complicated as that.
Oh, fair enough. I mean, because it looks cool. One thing I've noticed with the guitar build-offs is when you have so many people building a one-off guitar and they're really thinking about their choices, it seems to show there's a lot of things that seem to happen in common. Like one year, loads of people were using I can't remember, a purple heartwood. I can't remember what it's called. Yeah. And then the following year, lots of people were doing purple and pink stains. And then, like you've got as well, a few people seem to be doing that double layered of guitars. And to me, that was all of those things that people were doing seem more innovative and more interesting than the factory things that were out at the time. And
one thing I do is I build everything to scale in Affinity Designer, which is basically the best alternative you can get to Adobe Illustrator. And I photograph all the wood I'm going to use, and I color correct the wood, and I import the wood to size actually into the bodies. And then I can apply stains and finishes, and I just basically as well work out which looks nicest before I actually build anything. I build it all and mock it up, so I know that if there's a knot on the piece of wood, I know where the knot's going to fall. I can see which way the grain pattern goes, just swap it around. And when I did the things with the fabric as well, I spent a lot of time manipulating the actual fabric to size, so I knew which bit to cut out to get the best look out of what I was going to use, which I found very useful.
That's intriguing to hear, because people might not know this. We were just chatting off air. You work as a graphic designer,
amongst other things. Yeah.
Oh, so that's why you've got that familiarity with.
Very visual. I have to visualize things. Yeah.
Because that's such an interesting approach. Like, I definitely have always. I started off doing scale drawings, but then I always took them into Photoshop and dropped things on them. But to actually have the wood that I was using to scale and position it all, it seems such an interesting way to visualize it all. I really like that idea. And then the staining it all.
Different filters, you can actually get quite an accurate representation of how a stain is going to react to the color of wood you're using as well. So
my mind's plodding along, because at the moment I'm trying to think of for something else that I'm doing. I'm trying to think of all the different ways that I've worked on designing guitars, and that's an approach that seems to take it to a sort of slightly further level, which I love that idea, because you see a lot of images online, particularly on Instagram, of guitars that you think, oh, that's a brilliant guitar, I'd love to have a play of that, and then you find out it's just a 3D rendering that someone's done of one, which is fine. That's how people work, but they look so real.
Yeah.
But to think of it done as a flat thing in Illustrator, have you by any chance, or would you be open to sharing any of those images at any point?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Because I'd love to see that process. I don't know if you ever want to put them on your Instagram or just cheekily send me a few so I can look at.
Yeah, no problem. That's fine. Yeah, I'm quite happy to send you the files. You know, you can play around with them.
Obviously, Ray, when you're designing your guitars, it's all on a 3D render or whatever your design program is. Have any of you ever worked in a different way when you're making guitars? Like we've often talked about the scale drawing, but
yeah. So like, you know, all of my guitars are modeled first. They start off as a 2D sketch, and then I build them up into a 3D model. And while I haven't, even with my traditionally built guitars, I haven't gone to the extent of photographing the wood. I basically select a piece of wood that's close enough to the grain of what I'm using, and I've dropped that in. But that's not to like. You're definitely, Jamie, you're taking it to a whole new level with the, so doing it so you can figure out where the knots will be and how the stains will react. For me, it's all just getting a visualization of what I'm doing. But one of the biggest reasons that I actually do it is because half the time I'll have an idea of how I want a guitar to look. I've got no idea what sort of hardware I'm going to use on it. So at that point, I've essentially created models of just about all the different pieces of hardware that I've ever used, from pickups to tremolos, bridges, all of those. And I can then just start. I get my body and I just start dropping the pieces of hardware on until I come up with something that I like.
That's the way of doing it. I think it's whatever process works for, I think, the individual at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah. So if you take a look at my Instagram, you'll see sometimes there's images of a guitar, and you'll see like 5 images of the same guitar, or 2 or 3, and you'll see it. Actually, I think with the Meteora I recently did, I had pictures of it with the Tunematic and a pair of humbuckers, Tunematic and triple P90s, and then there was a tremolo with triple P90s. And I was just trying to decide which one I wanted to build, and I'm building both.
It'd be rude not to, wouldn't
it? I couldn't quite figure it out which one I wanted. There you go.
Oh, lovely.
So
this is one of your. I'll look for the renders in a minute. I'm just, again, if anyone's listening on audio, I've put links in the description to all of our Instagrams and YouTubes, etc. So you can.
There you go. The purple one with the white pick guard.
Nice.
So I've mentioned this before, but when I first saw the Meteora, I think it was in that series. You remember what it's called, Ray? The one where they mix different the paranormal series. So it was one with a kind of a Telecaster bridge on it. And it just looked to me like such a cool new design. It felt different enough to other Fender designs to feel like it was its own thing. And I absolutely fell in love with it. It's the first time I remember really liking a modern guitar that I hadn't seen the design of before, other than the St. Vincent guitar, which I think is amazing as well. I'm talking about factory built things, not just, there's loads of boutique builders who I like. And but it's cool seeing the 3D renderings the way you work, Ray, because it's so quick to change everything. Jamie, when you were doing those things you were talking about on Illustrator, are you doing it right at the beginning before you commit to anything? You've got your wood and your materials, or are you doing it as you're going along?
I do it right at the beginning. I'm a bit sad I actually had things drawn long before the Great Guitar Build-Off ever appeared. I've just seen the thing in the chat about what the software is called. Sorry, I can't work out how to type a message. And I've only just discovered that and see the chat. So it's Affinity. It's the closest you'll get to Adobe Creative Suite. So they do like an InDesign version, a photo, and an Illustrator one, and it's a one-off license of about, I think they have a sale every now and again. I think I got all 3 for about 80 quid, and it's a lifetime license, so there's no subscription fee. Anyway, going back to, I forgot the question. I've crashed.
Oh, we were just talking. I was talking about if you do it all at the beginning. So Ray's obviously, you have to, I presume, do a lot of it at the beginning, because when you're 3D printing a body, presumably, if you're going to have certain hardware, you need to make sure that the 3D printed body has bits that you can screw into or bolt into, or however you attach in printed in the right place.
Yep. So that's the biggest issue. If I get halfway through a build and I decide I don't like something, or something doesn't line up, or I've made a mistake somewhere. The worst one I've done a couple of times, which I didn't figure out until the end, was I had my intonation off by like 3 to 4 millimeters because I'd put a neck break angle in and hadn't compensated for it. I figured out right at the end, I can't plug and drill the body. I have to start again.
Yeah, that's a fun.
On the flip side of that, starting again means 2 days of printing, and I'm back to where I was. So there's upsides and downsides.
It's fixable. I like using this method as well. The way I do it is I can tweak the shapes. So I think if I make one, I'm not quite happy with one part of it. If I'm going to do it again, I can just slightly tweak it again, then I'll print it out, and then I'll remake a template from there. So I find it very useful for that. And when I tried to then make my own shape, I again messed around with that until I was happy with the curves. So it's useful for things like that.
So how are you making your templates?
I just print it out onto bits of paper and stick it down onto MDF and have at it from there. And if it goes a bit wrong, then it's a bit thinner in places.
Hey, Brad or Glyn, because I know both of you. Glyn used to teach guitar making. Brad still does. When you're working with students and you've got, say, a limited time that they're doing a course, presumably everything has to be decided right at the start that they're going to be doing when you're teaching.
Yes and no. I mean, if you're starting off, so like I would structure it like, we'll work on the neck first, or the body first, and if they want to change something along the way, there's certain points where it becomes critical that, we can't change it beyond that. So, if they haven't even picked out their neck timbers or done, a fretboard, we can still change the scale length and all that sort of thing, especially because we're going to template to the neck to route it to the body. So, that stuff can be moved around, and then, then we'll do the pickups and everything later and route out the cavity. So nothing kind of ties them in unless they've actually selected and started cutting the timber itself.
See, I was always a big fan of you build a guitar around the hardware, because that's the thing you can't change very easily afterwards. So, it's really interesting hearing Jamie, because I come from the 20th century when we didn't have. I was teaching stuff then, and most of my making was when we didn't have the internet. So no one was going to design anything on a computer. So that was quite different. But it was always like the first thing you got to do is get at least all the critical hardware, or at least know what you're going to be using. But no, I mean, you're right. Yeah, there's lots of stuff you can start with, isn't there? Especially if you're thickness and timber and. Yeah.
I mean, if you can keep a few things flexible, pick up choices and that sort of thing. They can chop and change it as they go, as long as we haven't drilled any holes in the body yet. And it's just ordering another bit of hardware. It's nothing too crazy there. And I've had that with a few of the students where they're like, oh, I want to do this, and then they're like, oh, well, can we change this now? And it's like, well, yeah, of course we can, because why not? If we want to do a different scale length now, we haven't cut a fretboard, go for it. We're just going to change where that neck actually joins to the body. Is it going to sit up a little bit higher or a little bit further back? So
yeah, I mean, you can't just you can't say, oh, I'm going to have it as thin as an SG, and I want to put a Strat trem on it.
No, yeah.
You suddenly go, oh, wait a minute, I've got I suppose you can grind a trem block down, but.
I've done that. I've done that when I've made a mistake.
Yeah.
Thought ahead here. Well, actually, that's not fair. I did that when I upgraded a somebody's Strat to a Floyd bridge that they wanted, and we bought a special block for it, and I hadn't measured the body, just assumed it would fit, and it didn't fit. So that was a rookie mistake of not measuring things or not checking what you're ordering beforehand. Hey, look, so I'm finding this really interesting, and I'm going to ask people if anyone's watching this in the future, could you add in the comments, if you don't mind, a little bit about how you do your design process? Because I'm trying to write something about designing guitars, and I've realised that I work in lots of different ways, and I can't decide. I don't think I'll ever settle on a particular way to do it. But when I work with clients, I always used to do rough sketches of guitars and like mood boards and lots of variations of it, but try to finalize as much as I could before I started building. So they knew that, because they're going to be paying me, so they pay me a little bit for design work, and then they put down a deposit once we knew what the guitar would look like. So in that case, you want it to be as close to the finished thing as possible. And as you've all said, you can make slight variations as you go along. But recently I worked with a client where things kept changing as we went along, and it just was so problematic because I had to keep going back and redoing things, and almost like I should have just restarted at some point. So I need to, when I'm working with someone, finalize as much as I can beforehand. But I've currently been working on some guitars that I'm just respraying. But in the respraying, I wanted to upgrade things. So like Glyn was saying, I had 5 guitars. I had 5 boxes. Each box had all the hardware that I picked for that guitar, and then I'd spray it and put the hardware on. But I can't help but keep changing things. So once I've sprayed it and I put the hardware in it, so I thought, oh, it'd be a bit better if I actually change it to P90s now. So it's like make a new scratch plate for this. I find it really hard to finalize something I'm doing for myself, because while I'm building it, sort of new ideas emerge or new choices emerge. Or just simply the time it's taking me to build it, I've seen something online that someone else is doing, I thought that will look cool. I just can't settle, which is why I often go back to my old builds and change them. Anyway, that's my rant on there.
So I actually totally get where you're coming from with that. Because I myself will have a build in mind, and I'll try to have something going on, and then I change my bloody mind halfway through it. And the problem with that for myself is as I was saying earlier, when things go wrong with like a printed body, I have to start again. So when I change my mind and I suddenly don't like a design, in the instance of like this guy, which was getting done, and I suddenly decided I don't want humbuckers anymore. I wanted P90s in it. So this body, which has quite a lot of time, and I don't want to imagine how many hours I've got in that design, will be going into the dumpster next week.
Can't you have like a B stock Etsy page where you're selling off 3D? Because I'm sure loads of people would love to experiment with these things that you've got left over.
Oh, look, I probably could, but that takes time and effort, and I've already put too much into it.
See, I'd keep that and just have that one as my humbucker one, and then make another one. If you're going to do it anyway, you might as well use it. Or you could think of inserts that you can adapt your pickups.
Well, the other thing I thought about was putting a clock face in it and hanging it on the wall.
Perfect.
Except I have too many of those.
It'd be like a horror movie in your house, full of ticking clocks. The idea of a room
all at different times.
Yeah. Oh, God, that reminds me of a really silly anecdote. But when I was at school, I remember one kid who always got in trouble at school. Just one break time, went around to all the classrooms and took all the clocks off, and then brought them into one class and lined them all up with times from around the world on it. And it was like getting in trouble with something that was actually quite funny and witty. It's always stuck in my mind. That's
constructive disruption.
Yeah, I mean, it annoyed the teachers, but I bet they were all secretly laughing at it.
I bet they still talk about it.
Yeah. So Jamie, with your designs, because there's definitely something about yours that when you look at your finished guitars, you can tell they've all been made by you because of some of the design choices you've got. What was it for your second guitar then that you took from your first guitar that you wanted to keep the same?
Basically, what I wanted to do was what I try and do each build is try and do something I've not done before and then improve upon what I have done. So for my second build, I don't feel I can justify spending good money on wood or things like that. I basically want to make sure I'm getting things right. So what I did with the second one, which is this one, is I took leftover bits from my first build to make the second. So the neck is made out of leftover Edigbo from the body. That's a strip of Venetian blind up the middle. I try scarf joints, so I tried a scarf neck on it. The top was made out of leftover body that I'd shaved off because I didn't throw it away, and I did a fabric top under epoxy. I don't know if it's catching the light on it, but it's not really good to do.
I'm going to see if I can find it on your Instagram to share it a bit more. Here it is.
There you go. And basically, the top is a multi-tube, buff. That's it. That's a better picture. And the back is a piece of 64-year-old lintel out of my house. So I cut it down the middle over 4 days by hand and stitched it together. And I love the fact it had nail holes in it, and there's still bits of metal in it as well. You can probably see on the pickup, on the cavity covers, there's bits of nail in it and stuff. So I kind of liked keeping it true to what it was originally. So it's basically, I finished this just before the first Yorks Cup, and this was a perfect use what you've got, because I used everything that I had. Oh, the fingerboard as well is 2 strips of the maple neck from the first build that I jointed down the middle and made a fingerboard out of as well. So
I love that contrast of the old wood with that sort of resin covered, I assume it's resin covered fabric on top.
Yeah.
Like the smooth, perfect finish and that kind of rough used look. So can I ask you a bit then about the fabric? Did you say earlier that you had to redo this fabric a few times?
I did. It didn't work properly on the headstock, and I think I got giddy with the resin on the body. I took a heat gun to it and boiled it. It all went white. So I had to take it all off. I also put an arm carve in. I actually bent the wood over the body before I put the resin on. So I'd had to create a big well so I could then sand the resin off in the corner to get an arm carve, and that leaked everywhere and caused issues. But luckily I did that on my daughter's desk in her bedroom while she was at uni, so no harm. So yeah, but the body is basically, multi-tubes, buffs, basically these multifunctional headwear things. It's basically one of those, and I worked out if you split it down the side, it does a full body cover, but they come in these amazing patterns.
Hold on, let me just make you large on the screen again.
So they come in loads and loads of patterns. I've got another business, and I sell these amongst other things. So I've got hundreds of them. But these are great, and they're stretchy. And
so maybe I'll get a link from you to that other business. We can put it in the YouTube and audio description. That's where people can go to get their fabric tops from.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you probably better get them on Amazon. They're only about £1.
I bet that business is doing well with marketing like that.
So yeah, but I like the idea of reusing what I've got, and because I'm still learning, I'm very conscious that I was quite surprised to be asked to come on here because I've only made a couple. So, but I suppose from a new builder's perspective, I've not really had anything majorly maybe a little bit disastrously go wrong. Every guitar I've made is playable and a decent instrument.
Well, I'll tell you what I find interesting about talking to people that are new at building. I mean, putting aside how they got into it and what it is that the passion that made them want to do it, it's what they bring to it from other things. So, for example, your way that you're talking about your design process, I found that such an interesting conversation because it's different to what I've seen before or heard people talk about before. So when you have people that are trained in guitar building from a young age and work all the way through, like we had, I've forgotten his name. That's terrible. The German guy who makes amazing guitars, who I love, and I forgot his name. Anyway, he trained as a luthier at the age of 16, went through building guitars, still makes amazing guitars. So he's got the whole narrative and story to tell. But then when you have someone that hasn't trained in that way, that's come into making guitars, but they're bringing their own processes and knowledge in as well, it's fantastic. So we're thinking about the design process in a different way. But then what I haven't really asked is, you've mentioned Ben and Crimson. When you're making the guitars, is that how you're learning to make sure, or where your resources are to make sure you're actually doing things right? Or is it you've got your model guitar, your sample guitar that you're mirroring, and you're just trying to copy that across?
No, everything I do is from the people who took part in the Great Guitar Build Off. Patrick at the Shed, Gio, Tornelli, you guys, everybody. I just watch and absorb bits, and I've got so many different bits of videos bookmarked on how to do X, how to do Y. I've got an inspiration folders of builds I've seen. I think, wow, that looks really cool, so I'll stick that in there. And so basically, I'm just as much knowledge as whatever, and I refer back to videos, and I can't remember how to do this or stuff. So basically, like anything, you can do anything if you've got YouTube. Plumbing a toilet, wire a house, get YouTube. It's building a guitar, YouTube. But it's because people spend the time to, show the process and what they do in such a precise way. And I've always had more interest in the builders like that more than the bigger companies. I mean, Crimson, not mean to diss Crimson, but I much preferred Crimson years ago. And it seemed a bit more passionate about what was happening as opposed what's going on now. So, like I say, I get more out of people I think I can relate to and identify. Somebody in their shed building it.
I would say there's something new. Like I haven't watched Crimson for ages until recently, but there's something new that's happening there with Ben doing similar to what we've just mentioned, looking at people that don't make guitars and looking at their processes and trying to bring that into guitar building, that I'm finding really interesting. Even some stuff which I didn't realize wasn't something people did, because I've been doing it for ages. He's been using CA glue as a finishing process, because he's seen people doing that in wood turning for making pens. And it's just seeing those other skills and techniques and sort of industries being brought in that I find intriguing. So he's doing that a bit again. Just quickly before I ask Glyn a question related to what we've just said, it was Nick from Petrek Guitars. If you haven't seen that episode, this episode 28, there's links in the description for all our past episodes. He trained as a luthier from a young age, has worked in lutherie for all his life, and it's an incredible story, his one, and which sort of links into Jamie's saying he's learning from all these builders on YouTube. Glyn, when you started, because you went to a school to train doing lutherie. What do you remember the people at that sort of stage that wanted to get into lutherie? What made them want to do it, or how they found out about it is the thing? Because I think a lot of people that building found out about it because of YouTube and seeing other people doing it and realizing, oh, that is a thing that can be done, as opposed to an other thing that happens magically somewhere else.
I don't think it makes that much difference having the internet or not where that's concerned, because most people who end up doing this sort of thing professionally do it because they can't help it. You can't not, and it's not necessarily that you're useless at everything else. It's just that's what's in your head, and you can't get it out of your head. Which is why I sort of flippantly said earlier about Jamie being able to stop, because I think once you've got that, then you can't get out of it. You can't. That's it. Yeah, it's like playing guitar. You never get there. And you never get to where you want to go.
Exactly. It's the journey. You want to improve upon what you've done previously. It's what I've done. Oh, I did that, but that irritates me. So next time I'm going to do this. I'm going to try that. Oh, I've seen this. I want to try that. Oh, balls that. I'll do it better next time.
And you're not going to make a guitar and go, oh, cool, I made a guitar now, cool. Now I wonder what my next hobby is going to be.
Yeah,
it's like it's not like that. You just can't help yourself. So there's a lot. It's interesting because I just through my work of selling pickups, I talked to quite a few guitar makers, and there's a huge amount of people who mention ADHD. As the hyper focus thing of of when you get it in your head, you have to do it. There you go. Yeah, me too. You know, yeah. Once it's in your head, you have to see it through, and you get really grumpy if somebody stops you. So yeah.
See, I have a problem of while I'm building a guitar, I suddenly got an idea for another one. So often I'll just put the one I'm doing aside and start the other one, which is, as I've mentioned before, not a way to run a business and something I've got to sort out with my currently 7 unfinished guitars that I want to finish in order to sell to fund the next ones. But yeah, it is. I can see that.
So there's the third ADHD person.
It definitely is a thing where there is a passion in it. And that's what Scott, I don't want to put words in someone that's not here's voice, but Scott often says that idea that he doesn't want it to be a business because he thinks it will take away some of the fun for him of it all. But everyone's different. For me, trying to do it as business means I have more fun doing that all the time than working in an office or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've kind of seemed to have shaped my life and what I do by doing this for a living, and I think that works perfectly for the way I operate. Because if I had a job working for somebody else, I wasn't just given a free hand and going off on tangents, then I think that would be awful for everybody involved.
I think you do it for the love of doing it, don't you? I mean, I was talking to a guy once. I've released bit of music with the band, and he said, "How much do you make of it?" I said, "Not much. You know, we got, I think, about 100 quid in royalties." He went, "Well, what's the point?" And I thought, you will never understand. It's not the point of it. It's the love of doing it. Anything else is a bonus. He's dead now. I'm still making music.
Yeah.
It's interesting what you're saying.
That story.
There's not a connection there, is there?
You do it because you want to do it and you enjoy doing it. That's the thing, isn't it? And it's the love of doing something.
But I actually think it's a step more than that you can't actually help yourself.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah.
So Jamie, I missed a question out earlier before we get onto your other guitar builds. Where's Fatpotanga come from?
I've get asked this so many times over the years, and it's a really rubbish answer. But I've had everything from it being a drug reference to a euphemism for a lady's trouser garden. It's basically, in the late 90s, I was playing a video game, and it said, "Enter a username." I just typed Fatpotanga. And then trying to log on, that username is taken, this is taken, so I thought, I'll use Fatpotanga, because it's always never taken. And eventually set up a YouTube channel just to, I can't remember, to view something or whatever, so I did Fatpotanga, and then I thought, well, I need a new YouTube channel. It basically shit sticks, doesn't it? So it's just a stupid name that amused me, that has stuck. Not a great story, but there we go.
No, but it's a memorable name, and also people see the thumbnail, and also obviously on your links, you've got the illustration that goes with it of the, as you point out, a 5-legged sheep giraffe.
5-legged giraffe sheep, yeah.
Giraffe sheep. Yeah. Oh yeah, not a sheep giraffe.
No, gosh, no. Goodness me, don't offend me. I keep meaning to change the name at some point, but it's kind of got stuck. It's certainly not what I wouldn't brand an instrument here.
So you put it on your headstocks.
Oh yeah. Well, what I wanted to do was, I liked the idea of saying I made this, but I didn't want to put my name on it because I thought it was a bit cheesy for my. I didn't like the idea of it. So I suddenly thought Braille, and by a lucky coincidence, my initials JH are perfectly symmetrical in Braille and 6 dots. So that's my logo.
I'm going to have a look to see if I can find a picture of that on your Instagram.
Lift it up here if you want.
Oh yeah, that's better. Hold it up.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, between the.
So that's JH and Blade. I can't work out.
So how do we come up for names for things, people? Names for models and stuff.
I number them.
See, I was chatting to someone yesterday about model designs, in the fact that there's so many something casters out there. It's like anything you build has to be a something caster. It is a hard thing. Glyn, are you saying that because you know the answer? You know this is how.
No. I'd love to know the answer. I spend time with thesauruses and doing all that, and if I've got something to name, I'll just spend. It'll be going through my mind for days and days and days and days, trying to think of a name for something. Yeah, just that idea of that quote by Picasso that inspiration does happen, but it has to find you when you're working. And I find it really, really difficult thinking of names. So I was just hoping
Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3.
Yeah,
until you run out.
I really make 4 guitars, so it's easy. 1, 2, 3, 4.
So I'm working on these Ghostbuster themes ones that I've called the Proton Casters, which I thought kind of work because it's proton packs and that you're casting the whatever. But yeah, I've done 4 versions of them, and they've been Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3, Mark 4. But that kind of works with the idea of it's I think anyway, of a sort of bodged together electronic component device thing that's hanging on your back in the films or you're carrying around. But I feel like you're right, Glyn. You do really need to work hard if you're giving it something a name, because it will stick. But then maybe Fatpotanga sticks and it works,
Well, it's certainly stuck.
Because your pickups, Glyn, presumably sometimes you're thinking not just a name for it, but a name that defines what someone's going to expect it to sound like. Yeah,
that somebody else hasn't used. That doesn't mean something rude in Italian. That it's so yeah. It's a bit of a pain. I mean, some of them are easy, and some I'm really happy with, and others you just go, oh god. I've just got a new one that I'm trying to name at the moment as well. So it's like, yeah.
I name a lot of the guitars that where I'm not so all of the Telecasters, they're just called Telecasters. That's what they are. But I often find the names will come to me as I get towards the end of the modeling section. I know at that point what I'm going to call it. So the Meteora above my head, that one, with the light blue and the white jigsaw puzzle pieces, that's the Cloud 9. That's what that one ended up getting called.
I've got a pickup called Cloud 9.
I better order a pair.
I do.
That note is mine.
It's a bit of an oddball guitar at the moment because it's got a whole it's like the offset classic Fender body shape, even though it's their latest one. However, it's actually packing a drag in the bridge and is running 13 to 63 gauge strings in C standard tuning. So she's a bit of a monster. But it doesn't look that way. And then the V is called a Toxic V. At the time, I was actually listening to an album from Exodus, the Toxic Waltz, and it just I was listening to that album almost on repeat, and that design is kind of what came out of it. The one beside it's Big Brother. It's still being built. I haven't worked on a name for that one yet. Like I've kicked around a few names. Nothing really jumps out at me. But the interesting one that I found was I did a guitar based on the Fano RB6T. That guy. And as you can see, kind of got a bit of a tramp stamp at the bottom. So that's the name of the guitar. It's called the Tramp. Now with this one, as you guys know, I don't sell my guitars, I sell the files. And a lot of people, that's been one of the most popular builds. So I've started giving them, when people show me the build pictures, I start giving them serial names that go along with it. So for my 2, The purple one is Nut Bustin' Dolores. The blue one is Blues Ball and Betty. Or I should say Blues Ball and Betty the Tramp. Purple Nut Bustin' Dolores the Tramp.
I mean, what you're saying here reminds me of something that Gabi said to me when she was on the live stream a few months ago, which was the idea that she questioned why my business was called Devil and Sons, because for some people it could be a bit off-putting to have a business with the name Devil in it. Like if you're religious, maybe there's connotations that you don't like in it. So it's hard. Sometimes your names might appeal to someone because of it, but at the same time put someone else off.
Yeah.
And I often think, well, if for me, if I'm naming something and it's putting off certain types of people, maybe they're the sort of people that I don't care about.
They're not your customer. They're not your customer base.
They're now
Simple.
a customer, yeah.
Yeah. So the two other ones that spring to mind was someone did a gloss black with a white binding around it. That one is the French Maid Tramp. And then there is another one.
Is this what you're calling them, or are you telling them you have to call it that now?
Well, we have a really great conversation there, like an exchange between us. It's just like they show me pictures of where they are in their build process, and I'm just like I'm blown away by the work that people are putting into it. On the same hand, nearly everyone who has built one hasn't put the tramp stamp on it like I have. They don't like it. And I actually really like the tramp stamp, but hey. But it's a really great interaction that I have with these people. I should say my customers. They're showing me what they're building, and there's an interaction. And oftentimes, it is usually me that ends up giving it the name, but we both decide it's sort of thing that's like, yep, that's definitely what it's called.
Yeah, right.
And so one of those customers I talk to on a regular basis, when he's talking about guitars, he'll sometimes mention Emma. And Emma is a green version of one of those that's called Envious Emma the Tramp. And, it's basically, it's almost like a serial number for those guitars. Even though I haven't built them.
I love the idea that because they're people making them themselves, that instead of just having a serial number, this is the 5th one built, this is the 6th one built, whatever, each one has its own personal name, which is unique to the person that's also printing it themselves or that it's for. In the way that, we have classic blues greats naming their instruments. But it's interesting because that's instead of a serial number. Jamie's mentioned putting the braille on, and last week we had Maynard on from Madsen Amps talking about with his pedals, he instead of having a serial number, he does it in. I'm having a total brain freeze today. What's the computer language with ones and noughts?
Binary.
Yeah. So he does it in binary on it. I feel sometimes like I shouldn't do anything that involves talking, which is a bit hard doing things like this.
Looking at thinking is the bit I struggle with.
Your naming. I remember hearing someone that worked for a company whose job it is to help brand things. So they'll go into big businesses that are making things they've been designing on, tech things they've been designing for a long period, and they help put the name to it. And it's the sort of things Glyn mentioned before, where you need to check that the name you're giving it doesn't mean something bad in another language, especially somewhere where you might be then trying to sell it in the market, and suddenly your object's got a name which has got bad associations there. Looking for things all around the world that don't have different names. And they said the hardest thing is, particularly with tech products that go through lots of iterations and lots of development, is to sell the name to the company. You've been brought in as a branding team, you're trying to sell the name to the company, and that company has inevitably got a name that they're calling their device, that they've called it since the beginning of their design, and they can't get that out of their head. They can't disassociate that. So the best thing to do when you're developing something is to give it like a number or something, and then the name comes later. I definitely, when I used to work in art galleries, I used to talk about the fact that some artists don't name their artwork until it's finished. And some artists even don't name their artwork. They get the friends to name their artwork for them. Anthony Caro used to make sculptures that he'd sometimes put in his garden and live with them for a few months. And often his wife would name them, because you're doing the dishes, looking out the window, or you're wandering around the garden, and suddenly you become connected to it. And that's how the name comes.
That's cool. Sometimes things name themselves, don't they? You just have to live with them for a little while.
Well, that's honestly how I feel that a lot of these get their name. Is it just comes. I don't have to think of the name. I find myself just suddenly start, like during the build or the modeling process, I just start referring to it by that name without even realizing that I'm doing it.
Mm.
The thing is, once you name something, you can't unname it. Even if you name it in your head, you think, oh, my mug's called Mike. You can never unname your mug. It'll always be Mike, even if you hate it.
Yeah.
I know someone that renamed their child when the child was 3.
Really?
Because they realised the name just didn't suit them.
Wow.
I think that was incredible. But everyone was happier with a new name.
I've never heard that.
Call them Fire or something.
I think the problem that they were having is the name. Every time they introduced the child, people were like, "Can you say that again?" Or what? Oh, I've not heard that name before.
Right.
It was a name I'd heard before and was quite common with. I think it was just a reference to a sci-fi film, the character in a sci-fi film, and then just started putting people off, and they got frustrated doing it, and the child didn't enjoy it when people didn't understand what their name was.
Chewbacca.
Dalek.
It was Emmett. Have you heard of Emmett?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
For me, that's Emmett. Doc. I'm saying it wrong now. Emmett.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
Anyway,
some character in it's the Lego movie, so.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Let's get back to guitars. And Glyn, I'm looking forward to seeing your new pickup when it comes out.
Well, this kind of why naming is in my head. This is extreme metal pickup that I've got a name for, but I'm not 100% sure about it. So yeah, and it's not quite my world, and so I'm not quite sure how it sounds in that world. So I have asked. In fact, look, no one's watching, are they? So I was thinking of calling it Warwolf, which is after the biggest trebuchet that was ever built.
Oh, nice.
By Edward I, who's actually my 24th great grandfather.
Oh, really?
So yeah, I know. No, it gets even funnier than this, because he built it at the siege of Stirling Castle in 13 blah. Anyway, and he used it, although they'd already surrendered. He said, no, you're not surrendering. I'm going to use my trebuchet. Anyway, he did. but now my partner, who's a Kiwi, we've traced her family tree back as well, and her lot were lairds of Dumfriesshire around that time. So there's a fair chance that some of her family were on the other side of my family with the big trebuchet.
What a great story! That's fabulous.
So yeah,
that's
so I thought yeah, it's very convoluted, isn't it? But we thought Warwolf. Or I thought anyway. I'm really, yeah. She'll put up with it.
See,
I thought Warwolf was a good name.
I love it. But one thing I definitely think strongly here is, and I think this with lots of band names, and when you're looking at names for artworks and things, names are important. But when you hear the story behind it, it's not essential you hear the story. You don't necessarily find out the story when you are first looking at the thing. But when you find out the story behind it, if it's something like that, Glyn, it adds a whole new, really interesting layer to it, which I think is brilliant to have something like that.
That's really cool.
Yeah. But don't worry, look, if you're stuck with the name, it's extreme heavy metal. Use one of those illegible fonts, and it doesn't matter.
Good. I hadn't thought of that. No, you're right.
Man, got a point.
Yeah. No, yeah. So I'm thinking. I mean, I'm obviously, because I've actually said the name to you guys now. It's probably going to happen.
Did you feel cringy when you were saying it, or did you feel like, yeah, that's right? Did it feel right?
It's hard to know. It's hard to know because that it's not a genre that I listen to. Whereas like other stuff I do, like the Doom pickup, like Ray's got, I kind of get that world a bit more. I didn't name my daughter named that anyway. My 9-year-old daughter named that pickup Draig, which is dragon in Welsh.
Is she into Doom as well then?
No, but she was learning Welsh at the time, which is not it's not a really fruitful activity living in New Zealand, to be honest. There's other languages. Mandarin might be more handy, but yeah. So and she liked the idea of calling it Draig. So
yes,
you know, Glyn, to be perfectly honest, I don't know if Werewolf is the right name for it, and the biggest reason that I say that is you don't seem sold on it.
Not yet. I never am.
Yeah. Because it's like, I know for myself, like when I'm naming them, it's just like when I know the name, there's no doubts. Like when I decided to call that one the Toxic, it was just like, yeah, that's it. Like I thought of a few different others, and with the Tramp, that was the first name that came to me. And it was just like, yeah, this is it. There's no, I didn't even consider other names. And that's the way it goes when, for myself when I'm naming things. If I have any doubt in my mind, then I'll start workshopping other names, because it's not it. It's not it until I sit there and come up with the name, and it's, oftentimes it just, comes out of nowhere, or I'll come across it. I don't have to sit and think about it. That is the name. You know what I mean?
I think probably one of the things that could be going on is you're thinking about it too hard. When you write a word, or you look at a word and it starts to look wrong, or you'll be building, say, a guitar, and you'll spot something, you think, oh, it's really niggling me. You focus on it, and that's all you see, instead of seeing the whole thing as a whole. You're not seeing the wood for the trees, if you like.
There's a great clip in one of the Father Ted episodes where they've got a car and it's got a little dent in it, just a tiny dent. And Ted leans down with a little hammer and starts banging it just to smooth it out flat. And he's banging and looking closely and banging. And then it pans out and the whole car's covered in dents. Looked in too closely at something and not seen the bigger picture.
Yeah. Sometimes you just need to come back with fresh eyes. And I think it sounds like a cool name personally, but it's got to sit well with you, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, again, I'm not an extreme metal guy, but it sounds like what I imagine extreme metal would be relating to in a lot of their songs.
Yeah,
maybe
possibly.
Out over the wolf, the O for the wolf.
Yeah, I could do that.
Hey, right. I just want to share, because I'm enjoying the conversation, and we can just keep going on tangents. But I'm aware Jamie's here, and I really want to show Jamie's white guitar. Let me just see if I can share it on here.
Do you want me to grab it as well?
Oh yeah, that'd be cool. I actually found on your Instagram a page which is presumably done in the Illustrator S program you're talking about.
Oh yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Well, let's get you holding the guitar up first.
So this is my GBO 23 one. The top is a pillowcase from Dunelm. The whole body is actually one piece of wood, so it's not a separate top. It's just one bit I've carved into.
But then painted the top, so it looks like painted halfway around the edge. You've done.
Yeah, basically, there's Murray Cohn Guitars has a white guitar and a wood back, and it's like the top has been put on, but he's left a gap. So I really liked that. So I don't know if you can see. I routed a groove all the way around it, because I thought it's pretty.
Oh, nice.
So it looks like there's a top on top of here, and looks like that's on top, but it's actually all one piece.
So not only does it look like there's the wood back, the white top, and then the pillowcase top on as well.
Yeah.
But there's also some other fabric along the sides of the.
There's fabric. Oh no, that's a walnut root veneer.
Oh right, okay, your veneer put on.
Yeah. So, and I did the same on the headstock. Again, I did these about 3 or 4 times. It's a heavy one, this one.
You see, now I see your headstock and I see the your initials on it.
Yeah.
In braille. It's really super cool. Before it just looked like a cool bit of decoration, but now knowing it's more than that, it's brilliant.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, it's I was quite pleased with this one, to be fair.
Was this
should be.
Yeah, absolutely. Is this your 4th one, or
This is my 3rd one? This was my great guitar build-off one, and I came 3rd in the scratch with it, which is quite cool.
I mean, it's brilliant.
Yeah, thank you.
So again, what you're saying here is, in this process here, you've got your piece of material.
Yeah.
But on your layout beforehand, you knew what material you were having. You scanned it on the right side, spent a while positioning it to get it right.
Yeah. Now this is different to the one on there because it went wrong and I had to take it off. I didn't put any white underneath it, so the wood showed through it, so I had to strip it off and start again. But in the end, I made a Picard bud cut out of the centre part, and I spent ages in the garden lying around and positioning it in different places until I was happy, trying to get the flow. So you can see where on say the top horn, there's a bit of flow and movement of where the pattern and the shape is. So I like texture, I like flow, I like movement and things like that with it. So yeah, I didn't use that bit. That came off. In fact, this is probably one of the biggest mistakes with, or the biggest thing that went wrong with, was when I did the headstock, epoxy went down into the truss rod access.
Ooh.
So I had to dig that out, but also as well as I drilled the truss rod access, I actually drilled the end of the nut. So the only way I can adjust the intonation is that I have one screwdriver that will catch on the little bit of stuff that's in it. And that's the only way I can adjust it, is with this one specific screwdriver. So that's kind of the biggest disaster I've had, I think, so far.
Well, no, you know, if you produce these en masse now, you have to also sell the specific screwdriver.
Exactly. It's going to be tricky to try and replicate knackering the end of the truss rod nut, but I can try my best.
So what I find interesting looking at this is the order that you've done everything in. I'm not sure, I haven't thought this through, but whether I would have sprayed all the white first, or it's hard to know which the best thing is.
Yeah.
It's come out looking brilliantly, though.
Do you know, I wanted to have a crack at spraying because I've never done painting, and it was perfect. It was absolutely immaculate. And I put a couple of coats of clear coat on it, and I thought, I'm going to do one more coat of clear coat. And it was up there, and I put it on an old bit of doormat I had, and I got a heat gun out, and I thought, I'll just flash it a little bit. And it blew bits of the mat into it. So it's kind of like, you ever seen American Pie, The Wedding, where he gives him a razor and he gives his trouser department a shave and he throws it out the window and it goes through the vent and it goes all over the wedding cake. It looked a bit like that. So I then had to try and take it back, but one finish was on it. Then it went back to the wood in one place. Then I couldn't get the same paint I'd used, which didn't react well with it. So basically, one part of it's perfect, but there's real, I don't know if it'll pick up, but there's issues with the finish on the lower horn and the lower body part that I'm not happy. It's a shame though, because it was absolutely perfect.
So I tell you what, I was thinking earlier when you mentioned something like this, but when you're doing it yourself and you're really looking at all these sort of small errors and trying to correct them and trying to make things look absolutely perfect, when you go to guitar shops, sometimes you just start to notice that even the big manufacturers are making some of those mistakes. Like I very disappointedly saw a Fender Telecaster Player 2 series, I think it was $1,500 in the shop the other day, and they positioned the bridge pickup, the bridge, so you could see the hole at the side of the cavity where the pickup was sticking out the side. Now, I know people say that's a common thing, but I don't think, I think you should be able to get away with building a guitar at that cost and not doing that, really.
Yeah, that's wrong. But people don't spot it, I guess. When you're involved, when you're actually making something, you are at such a granular level of you look at everything. You're hypercritical with what you're doing. So I guess some people won't spot it. I think they just assume it's a fender. See how thick the epoxy was on there.
Yeah, well, I brought this up to show because you mentioned earlier when you were on the first one with the fabric top and you had that body carve, how you had a sort of well of resin that you had to sand back.
Yeah.
So people just listening on audio, I've got up here from Jamie's Instagram an image of the headstock for this guitar, which you put the material on and then you've epoxied all over the top. But because of the shape of the headstock, and presumably you had to have it all angled a bit strangely to pour the resin, there are bits where the resin's much thicker than others.
Yeah,
I did you sand it all back to make it even all the way across?
Yeah. I deliberately did it that way because I thought I can actually take the resin and, I mean, ideal world, I'd have used a brush and done it in layers or something, but I deliberately did it like that so I can get where it meets the nut. I wanted to get a thick enough coating, if you like, so that was why. So I'd rather have too much on and take it off than the other way around until it leaks into the truss rod cavity and buggers it all up.
So can I assume then on the actual body part, the resin's a good couple of millimeters thick as well?
Yeah.
That definitely adds to the kind of richness and the depth of the cut of the image, I think. Absolutely.
I got that from Milehouse Studios when I watched him do one of his first fabric tops by getting the depth of it and the refraction through it. It gives a real sense of movement and height with it. You know,
I'm just going to share one of my favorite images I've seen so far from your Instagram is your tiny pencil.
Yeah, me and Patrick Shedd have had a bit of a tiny pencil war. He's winning. I think he's had one slice. I think I would have beat him, but the shop vac ate it, and I didn't think it was worthy. Back into it.
So, you said you've made 4 guitars.
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit about your most recent one then?
Most recent one is the Jurg's Cup one. We use what you've got one from last year. So this is based, again, it's refined the shape of the white one. Again, we've got the raised centre, but not as high. And as it was use what you've got, this is actually made out of Venetian blind, mostly. So the wings here, there, and the sides are sections of Venetian blind. These are wallpaper samples from B&Q with more wallpaper samples there. So basically the center is a solid block of wood, and everything else, you can see where the wood ends there, and then everything else, and the cavity covers, Venetian blind. The neck is a strip of maple from the last neck I made up the middle. And the sides are bed slats from my wife's childhood bed that one of the kids had for a while.
How incredible.
So yeah,
really is what you've got.
That's it.
So
sorry.
Again, I'm sharing some images from your Instagram here. So it looks like you put the Venetian blinds on this side bit here on top of the fabric or the wallpaper sample. Does that mean you then poured like a layer of resin into there?
Yes. What I used was the sides as basically a resin well, and I put the binding on the sides around the lighter wallpaper. I used the binding as the resin well on to hold the resin out, and it worked really, really well. Actually, it worked perfectly.
Oh, that's a very clever idea. Oh yes, so here, in fact, you can see a little video of it on your Instagram.
Yeah, one of the few I've done. But again, I've had this old Venetian blind in my garage for years, and I've snapped bits off and used it to wedge under things, or I use it to make templates because you can cut it with a Stanley knife. You can do all. It's really, really practical. But I thought it's got a pleasing amount of boing in it, so I figured let's see if I can make a side. And I've actually got a duff bit of side from it here. So you see it's nicely flexible.
See, I may be misremembering, but I think Garby, when she was on, she was talking about some of the instruments that she makes to sell to raise money for her school are made from reclaimed wood from her school. And I think she mentioned using some blinds as well.
Yeah, I think they're great. I mean, this obviously snapped and burnt because I don't actually have a bender. I used a heat gun and just bent it over the metal of it and then made a heat box out of a bit of old tubing as well and stuck a wallpaper stripper in the end of it, which worked. But would I use it again? No, but it's it's a fun thing to do. Is
it cedar? Because I could hear it. It was quite lively.
I think it's beech.
Oh, really?
I think, but I can't remember.
Can you hold it up to the camera?
Yeah.
It looks a bit dark for beech to me.
Does it?
I can't see any detail anyway. So.
Well, I've no idea what it is, to be honest. It's wood from a tree.
Right.
So yeah. I've got a question for you. I love the way you've used the edge of the binding as a way of having that well for when you poured the resin in. Is that something you envisaged happening when you were designing it on your Illustrator, or did
Yeah, I thought this time, why not? Because you can get really thick binding. I kind of did it with the GGBO one as well, is using the binding, getting slightly deeper binding and using that as a well instead of making a different thing. I don't like wasting bits as well, so I did contemplate, making a big square form with the fabric and then cutting it to size, but I worry about all the bits that are getting wasted on the edge, so I thought I'd try it that way and it seemed to work quite well.
So I know you said you wondered why someone that's new to building would be invited on, but I'm stealing that idea. I think it's very clever. Edging. I would always, in my mind, think I put the binding on afterwards, but that makes so much sense.
Yeah, I thought it seemed to work. And use what you've got as well. I used black printer ink, inkjet printer ink, to partly stain it, which worked surprisingly well. And 3D printer PLA for the logo dots, which you can't really see because it's quite small. Fingerboard was quite an interesting one. I radiused it and polished it, and I oiled it, and then I ended up sanding it. And then whilst I was staining the body, I got a bit on the fingerboard and thought, oh, bugger it, I'll just do the whole lot. And it came out in this really cool kind of tabby cat effect. It's actually a really bland fingerboard. So I'm quite chuffed at that. So it's definitely used what we've got.
It's definitely an accent that's turned out looking cool.
Yeah.
Accident. Hey, look, Dave has joined us in the live chat, and he wasn't here at the beginning, and he's just got a question which I can't remember if you answered directly. But what made you use material? Was it just you wanted to try out that technique, or was it?
Yeah, well, I've seen it for a while, and I thought it has a pleasing amount of boying, and I wondered. Actually, after watching one of Dave's videos where he's bending the sides and he's built the steam box and stuff, I think it was the Kingfisher guitar, and I thought, this would probably do that. And as a use what you've got challenge, I thought I'll have a go at it. So yeah.
Nice one, Dave. Hey, so I just want to go back to that idea if people don't know about it, and I've left links in the audio and the video description to the Yergs Cup. Just being a way of inspiring people to have an excuse to build something. So sometimes not everyone needs an excuse to build something, but sometimes having an excuse helps. But when you're doing something like the Yergs Cup, where there are multiple people building at the same time, you've also got other people that are working at the same time as you that you could interact with. So we've got our forum. If you don't know about that, again, links everywhere. But on the forum, a lot of people use the forum very specifically as a way of sharing their builds and asking for advice, getting some feedback, getting support in it all. And there's a whole area devoted to the Yergs Cup with people building at the moment. So I do think it's worth checking that out. I think because we had such an interesting and long conversation today, maybe we need a very specific Yergs Cup one coming up. And I feel like that should be one when Corey is definitely able to join us. Obviously, we can't predict the weather living by a coast in the rainforest. But if Corey can be here, because he more than anyone, I think, is quite involved because of the Instagram that he manages, seeing everyone's builds as they come along. Yes, if you don't know, also on the Instagram, that seems to be quite a good place for us to share what people are working on. So what Corey tends to do is if someone puts in the hashtag Jurg's Cup or I am Jurg's or Jurg's Cup 2, he'll share it on our Instagram page. But he's always monitoring what different people that part of the collective are doing and sharing their work. So the Instagram page is a great place to see people building. And as Jamie said, one of the things that got him into building was not seeing professionals during the Great Guitar Build-Off making their guitars, but seeing those people that were just wanting to take part sometimes for the first time building.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, I don't know, I didn't check with everyone beforehand, but Glyn had suggested maybe we had a bit of a show and tell today. Glyn, did you bring something along?
Yeah. I mean, I just thought useful jigs and useful things that things that people use. And I've got I haven't used this for years, but this is my old truss rod routing jig. And I don't know how you route your truss rod channels. I mean, when I was making acoustic guitars, I used to use a table saw for it. But this is when I was making electric guitars for routing, when I was doing straight truss rods. So, I mean, pretty obvious. You stick your neck on the in here and you angle it. Now, I always made truss rods. I used to make my own truss rods, just single bar ones, 3/8 mild steel round bar. But I used to have them parallel to the back of the neck because the straight truss rod works. And I like straight truss rods. I just like how the feel of like a Gibson truss rod. So for making necks, I put it in there and I put a little shim to angle the neck. But I'd also route the back of the neck at the same time.
Ah, right.
Because your neck is sitting there at that angle. And if you've routed the sides of your neck, that's great. But then if you thickness it as well to that angle, when you come to carve the neck, it is so much simpler. And you've got that straight line down the middle. So
can I just go through to picture that? Does that mean that when the wood's going in to do it, that the router bit has got a distance between the router and the actual wood that's in there, or is the wood touching right up against that? So the neck is basically I screwed it. You just would screw it to the underside of the jig to do the truss rod channel, and then with a different cutter, with like a half inch cutter, then I would route the back of the neck through here. Turn the jig over and then route it through there. I'm trying to picture, how does that make it parallel with the top?
No, parallel with the back of the neck. So the truss rod is parallel to the back of the neck.
Yeah, sorry, that's what I meant. How does it make it parallel to the back of the neck?
Because
is it angled?
Yeah, sorry, because you put the neck in, and I would put a shim.
Oh yes, you said that. Yeah,
like a 2 mil to whatever angle you want the drop off from behind the first fret to wherever you're going to start making a heel, or whatever drop off you want there would be the size of the shim.
Nice.
Yeah. So then and it just always makes carving easier if you've got that extra line down the middle. You've got the sides routed, and then you've got the center routed too.
So the center's routed just one straight line, and then you use that as a guideline for carving. I would route the whole lot out. Yeah. Thickness, because just you might as well while you've got it in the Watsit, I mean, it's all primitive plunge router stuff. Obviously, a CNC would be way better, but most people are in the plunge router world.
Yeah, I'm gonna remember that.
I like it.
I'll send you some pictures if you want. I mean, you can see I've put all sorts of different necks and it's been screwed in different times. But yeah, so that used to work really well. But I have one over there that's curved as well for doing Fender truss rods. Because Fender truss rods have got a curve.
I like a good jig that makes things simple. Sometimes I spend more time making the jigs than the things I'm using, but that looks like because of putting the shim in, there's so much you can do with that. It's just every neck basically that's straight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then obviously it's been adapted, a whole hacked out, because that was an angled headstock that wouldn't quite fit in it, But there you go.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Has anyone else brought anything along they want to share?
Yeah, got a couple of things.
Cool. Thanks, Brad. Let's flip you up.
So first one was, you know how when you get like a template for a pickup or whatever, and it's got really shallow corners, like a really small radius around the edge of the template, and it's a bit hard to get in there with, a standard, 1/4-inch router bit, because they have to have a bearing around them. So usually find you've got like I don't know, maybe an 8mm, 9mm sort of, radius around it. So you don't get a sharp enough edge. And I was looking around, I couldn't find an appropriate router bit, but StewMac actually have this Amana tool router bit, and so it's got a tiny little 1/4-inch bearing on there, so you can actually get in real tight to your templates there. So I thought that was pretty handy. A lot of people probably know about them, but I was looking and I didn't know it existed. It turns out we actually had them in a drawer at the school as well. I had seen them and I thought they were for something else. I didn't realize they had the bearing on them. But, I thought that was a good one to share. And the other thing was I picked up one of StewMac's new, it's what they're calling their Royal Blackwood boards. So what it is a torrified Purple Heart board. So where they can't get, pitch black ebony anymore, they've got this process, and thought I'd get one just to see what it looked like, and it's actually quite good. It's really, really dark in person, so a good option for someone trying to get something that's as dark as an old piece of ebony, but is cheaper than and readily available than the ebony now.
How does it sound with a tap? Is it?
Sounds like that. I don't know.
Oh, it's quite. I
don't know if you can hear that.
Yeah, no, that's nice.
It's got a ping to it. Yeah,
that's quite a rosewoody sort of a sound. It's dense though, isn't it? Purple Hat. Although
I assume so, because I've never used any other timbers but the Australian timbers, and I usually go with a Gidgee board, and that's quite up there on the Jenka hardness. But I can't make an impression on it with my fingernail. That's usually my go-to to check something is worth using or not. If I can dig my nail in sideways into it and make a mark, then I'll toss that bit of timber to the side.
Yeah.
But I can't do that with this. So it's very light, but seems to be pretty rock solid. So
just watch the dust on that stuff.
Yeah.
Purple Heart dust is people
Nasty.
can react to. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Hey, just quickly, Dave just said in the text that he was intrigued about the routing the truss rod channel parallel to the back of the neck. Glyn, did you say that's because it just makes it more effective for giving more right?
Yeah, well, if you think of it, there's lots of different kinds of truss rods. If you think of a Gibson truss rod, which is just a straight rod, 3/16 round bar, with an anchor at one end and the thread nut the other end, and so all there is, then you kind of need that to be nearer the back of the neck than the front. And I always ran Gibson kind of roughly do them parallel, but they're not quite. And I don't know if they intended to and didn't quite, but yeah. So I find they work really nicely. I always like the feel of a Gibson truss rod. Rather than your modern two ways and all that. And I always build a neck with relief in it anyway, so that you don't ever have that back bow issue. So I do that when I glue the fingerboard on. I glue it onto I use a slightly curved thingy that I glue it to. Thingy's not the right word, is it? Call.
Thingy is a perfect word.
yeah. But and I find that I just like the feel of that. I mean, I know you can buy, and I like making truss rods, and I know you can buy them two ways and all that, but yeah, That's just what I choose.
Yeah, I remember early on when we spoke to you talking about you've always made truss rods.
Right. Yeah, it's just what I've always done. And with Fender, like a Fender truss rod is exactly the same thing, but curved. You know, and the only purpose of that really is because if you're not going to have an angle back head, if you're going to save that much wood and have a straight headstock, the truss rod has to come out the headstock at some point, at some angle. So you've got to, it's got to be curved to come out at a good angle, or the runoff is going to be huge. So yeah, and that works fine too. And then some of the Fenders, I don't know if you're aware, had another anchor underneath the 7th fret dot. That was a thing they did for a short period of time in the 80s, where you'd have the curved rod, and I'm using my hands here because I've got a whiteboard, and then they'd have another anchor holding the rod in the center. Have you come across that, Brad?
Oh, hold on, Brad, you're muted.
I'm not muted. No, I haven't pulled any fretboards off anything, so I haven't seen anything like that. So no.
Yeah. So
it was a round cylinder, wasn't it? It was like a round cylinder with a hole through it that the cross rod used to run through. Yeah. Yeah.
And if you pull the dot marker out of 7th fret, you'll see a little screw in there. That held it. They put it directly under 7th fret. But they didn't, and I don't know when they did it and when they didn't do it. I mean, I've come across 80s Fender necks where they did it. I don't know if there's any internet information on it. I'm just going from what I've seen.
I actually had a Strat that had that, and I wasn't that old. I think I was 21, 22, and I spent about 18 months chasing a buzz in the guitar that I couldn't find. It was in my neck. It was that screw under the 7th fret. And I out, and yes, I could not so much hear it, but I could feel this vibration through the guitar, and tracked it back to that. So that's how I'm aware of that one.
Yeah, well, I had one a couple of months back. There's a friend of mine who's I don't repair guitars now, but a friend of mine who's still full-time repairing, and he had an old Hamer, an original 70s Hamer, and that had a truss rod rattle. And we had a long chat about it, and what he ended up doing, what we decided was he pulled the dot marker out of the 7th fret and drilled carefully down until he touched the truss rod, and then he put a little dowel in there just to not push, but just to touch it.
Yep.
So that truss rod wouldn't rattle because it was too loose in the slot. So it just touched it, and then obviously put everything back. To going through the 7th. That dot marker, you don't leave any fingerprints.
Yeah, I was going to say, I wonder if that was a Gibson, maybe a QC thing at the time, that if they had a neck that when you set it up and the right relief was on it, but the truss rod was loose, maybe that was a way to rectify that and get it out the door without trashing the whole instrument.
Yeah, I mean, also where it was built. I mean, Hamer were building amazing guitars then, but where and when it was built was probably a very different climate to Auckland, which is always really humid. So that neck, yeah, you're right. The neck just maybe moved, and it was fine then. And anyway, that was the fix for it, which took us a bit of figuring out, but it did work.
It's really interesting. I've just done a quick Google. I can't find anything straight away about that type of truss rod. I'm sure it's there somewhere, but that's really intriguing. It sounds to me like that would work really well, having that there. But maybe there must be reasons that it didn't get followed. It's been evolutionarily sort of pushed aside.
I mean, there might not be anything on the internet. It might just exist. The knowledge of it might just exist in old people's heads, you know.
Well, we've got to get it on the internet before they die out. Sorry.
I don't know if I've still got it. I'm just checking it to have a look. So one of the, as I said earlier, I 3D model all of my components, and one of the Strat necks that I modeled actually had that in it. Taken from some blueprints that I found of a early 80s Strat. And I'm just trying to have a look to see if I can find it. Because when I modeled the neck, I'm frets, the fretboard, and the neck and the truss rod, they're all in there, but separate.
I'm pretty sure the original Jeff Beck Strat, that signature one, which was an 80s one, which had a stupidly big neck. Like the neck was so big, you know, Strat's an inch thick neck, yeah, if it's a maple neck one.
Yeah.
So the butt end is an inch thick, and then you remove stuff. Well, the butt that was exactly the same plane as the neck all the way around, all the way along. It was, the whole thing was an inch thick. And I remember changing the truss rod out of one of those, had a skunk stripe, and wrapped the skunk stripe out, and that had that, and they were 86, don't know. Yeah, you could probably look up one of those early Jeff Beck, because they had different models, but the very first lot, I think, were around then.
Big sounds like a party to me.
I'll put in the chat. I'll put in the I'll pin it to a post, or I'll put it in a comment on the video description. But I found a page on Fender.com. They call it the Biflex truss rod, and the idea is it's a single rod that you can use that piece in the 7th fret to move up and down, so you can do forward and back bows by adjusting it there. And it was introduced in the 1980s, early 1980s. It doesn't say exactly what model, but it's still used in their Fender play.
Okay.
I think it's, so they're still using it.
I've learned something today.
The Highway 1 series had it, and here it is, and some basses had it as well. Anyway, there's a whole page dedicated to the history of it and how it works. So interesting. Interesting to see that they still do use it as well. Cool.
Well, they also have that plug in the head, so where you to make the two-way truss rod, as you wind the nut up, it pushes against the plug in the headstock, and supposedly that's enough, but it just pushes the plug out quite often. Yeah, you must have seen that the insert that they put in with a little wee hole. It's a 1/8 Allen key. Yeah. Yeah, and they often push that up, or at least it cracks the lacquer around the plug. Yeah. Anyway.
So I've actually found that I do actually have a model of it here that I can show you if you want me to share the screen.
Oh yeah, if you can.
Yep. So bear with me a second here.
I'm such an idiot. I'm such an idiot, Ray. Every now and then I see you looking up and looking around, and I think he must have all these guitars hanging on the wall around him. But of course, it's your multi-screen setup.
I thought he was looking at a shelf.
I'm going to show 3 monitors here. So let me just see if this is going to let me do it. That one. Okay. That coming through. Nope, still not coming through, is it?
Are you able to share? Oh wait, I can see it. I've got to let it on the screen. There you go.
Oh, the power.
Okay, so you guys can all see it now, yeah?
Yep.
All right. So there's essentially your Strat neck. If I pull off the fretboard, we'll get rid of the fret wires. So you can just sort of start to see it there, and there's that screw. Now, if I get rid of the neck itself, bada bing, bada boom, there she is.
Yeah, and you can see the plug. You can see the plug up by the nut there. If you can zoom in on the nut, yeah, right there. Dot markers. Yeah, but then if you go up to the other end, you can see where that plug is, that the truss rod, the nut adjuster is supposed to push against.
Yeah.
This end or
that yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the wooden. That's American walnut. Oh no, that isn't. That's a bigger one, isn't it? That's like a Mexican one.
Yeah, that one. This one was an American standard.
Oh, is it? Okay, just a hole looks a bit bigger to me because she should be an 1/8, whereas the Mexican ones have a bigger one and a plastic plug.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you about that one. I might have measured it wrong as well when I modelled it.
Yeah, look at that.
As
I
always,
didn't know these.
I was going to say,
Yeah, no, and that anchor isn't an old. That's not an old Fender anchor either. It's a more modern one as well.
yeah, I wonder if that's like the one that it says here they're using in the Player series now.
Could be.
So again, I'm sure that people listening on the audio are missing out on the visuals, but able to follow along with this concept. But like I said, Fender have it on their website, and it's called their Biflex truss rod. Hey, look, we've been talking for quite a while, and we normally try and keep these streams at about an hour and a half, try not to go over 2 hours. But has anyone else got a jig they would like to show? Do you even use jigs, Ray?
No, but I make them.
Of course you do.
So, what I was actually looking around, I was looking around down at the ground because I have a Les Paul router template that I've been asked to make, because it's where it's a little different is that it's a buckethead Les Paul body. So overall, the guitar's about 30% bigger. It's
oh, I didn't know that. Interesting.
Yeah, so the buckethead Les Paul it's actually a baritone 27-inch scale guitar. The reason it doesn't look out of shape is because the body is about 30% bigger, and buckethead is 6'6" or 6'7"
without the bucket.
So everything just looks in proportion. So yeah, that was one I'd made for a customer where it was ended up being about a 4-piece template. So it was like the body with neck pocket, without neck pocket, the modern Les Paul chambering holes, just things like that. So do I use jigs myself? Look, no, not really. Not at all. Actually, not at all.
No, I can't see why you'd need to. Hey, Jamie, you said you'd brought something along as well.
Well, it's a bit big, so it's in my garage, so you have to have this imaginary one here. But basically, this is kind of like a new builder hack. I didn't have many clamps when I started building. So what I did is I converted a Black & Decker workmate into a body clamping jig. So basically, I screwed 2 shelves either side onto the bed of the Black & Decker workmate, and then I put a piece of CLS timber on either side parallel, which I had some cork expansion strips with wooden floors. So I put the cork on the edge. Basically, you put your body blank in it with the glue down the middle, tighten up the handles, and it perfectly glues bodies without the need for buying lots of clamps. So if you, like me, I didn't want to go out and buy lots and lots of bits and pieces because am I going to build a second? Of course I am, because I'm trapped now. But I didn't know that at the time. So I thought it was quite a good hack, and it's actually perfect because the cork, it just adds perfect pressure all along and glues really, really easily.
Hey, those workbenches are excellent. I used to do something where I would just take a piece of wood, a strip of wood, and I would screw my guitar to it by putting the wood. I'm trying to get myself in focus on the camera. I'd strip of wood like the thickness of a neck, screw the body on top of it by screwing through the neck pocket, already had the holes in it, and I put the back plate of the neck I'd put into the actual pocket recess, screw down so it's on the wood, and then I'd put that wood in between the clamps of the table with the Black & Decker as I tightened it up, and that would hold the body in place. I'd obviously put a bit of foam or something on the wooden surface to stop it slipping a bit, and that's often how I would then work on the surface of a guitar if I was stripping it or sanding it or something like that to hold it in place. It just seemed to work really well.
Yeah, the other bit I got, it's a thing I bought, is I don't have a room for a killer drill, so I got one of these drill guides, and it comes with different sized inserts, and basically it's got a bit of double-sided because they can wobble a bit, but I think that was about 14 quid, and it comes with 6 inserts, and if you don't have a drill press, it actually works really, 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 really well for perfectly straight holes.
Sorry to make people dizzy that are watching, but I saw it on your Instagram feed.
Wealth of content there, eh? Look at that.
Oh, I'm going to have to give up because there's too much on your Instagram feed. Oh, there it is.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ta-da! Yeah.
Nice.
But I found that really, really useful. It's cheap.
Nice. So just before we go, I've got one quick one as well, which is I'm not sure if they're going to work because I've only just made them, but I'm trying to up my wiring game, partly based on what Joe from Helena said about the fact that when you look inside his pedals, it's got his string, and anyone getting into making pedals should have their signature style of wiring. So I thought I've just got to up my wiring game just so everything inside that you can't see just looks great. Like I try and make it look good at the moment, but I want to make it look great. So to do that, I've got an old scratch plate. I've just stuck some wood on the scratch plate. So now I can turn it upside down. I can put all my components in so they're sticking out like they would normally do on my scratch plate. And I can wire it in place on here and then transfer it over to the scratch plate I'm working on. I've got smaller ones like this that I've done. And like this, because at the moment I tend to have them all my components either on little grippers that I'm working on, or I work on them in the body, and often in the body there's just not much space to get it all looking as neat as I want it to. But this way, the top of the components, so the top of the pots are going to stick out of here like it would do on the normal scratch plate. And I can turn it over and everything will be perfectly in place with nothing in the way like it is when it's internal to the body for me to wire, so that I can make sure all my wires are exactly the right length. Because what bugs me about my wiring at the moment is I try to make things look neat, but often one wire is like 1 millimeter or 2 longer than another, and it's just got a little kink in it. And you look at it and you think, well, that's someone that's tried hard but not quite succeeded, is what I think when I look at it. So
that's pretty cool. I like that.
Instagram going forward, it's all going to be brilliant, I hope.
My previous life, I did like high-end car audio. I think I've mentioned before.
Oh, you did, yeah.
And we often have adjudged, usually by other fitters, about by the quality of our wiring. And you'll see, and Brad would have seen it himself, where you'll see an install and all the wiring is perfectly neat and cut to the right length. And you look at it and you think that must have taken hours. And the thing is like it all looks absolutely amazing until you take off that one panel, and that's where you'll find everything stuffed inside of by it. So when you're talking about like everyone develops their own style, it's my question. I was thinking to myself is like, bird's nest is a style, right?
My style.
Yeah.
Hey, just one thought with your wiring. If with your Strat, if you have your earth wires really neat and tight between the pots, I leave some slack, because pots do turn. The nuts get loose and pots turn. So I've seen quite lots of them where they've got the wires really tight between them, and they just shear off.
See, because I wasn't certain. That's a good point, because I wasn't certain of solid wire across it, so that there was no flex in it, because I thought that might help hold it. But actually, maybe that's not strong enough for pot rotation. But I thought that also might help deal with that issue of the pots rotating.
Then it depends on the player. If it's a player who's, when the pot gets rattly, decides they need to tighten it, then you're sweet. But often people will just go leave it until they actually fall out. The same with jacks. Jack sockets get loose. And what's happened with my video here? Jack sockets get loose, and they're going to get loose no matter what you do. But anyway.
So Glyn, what you're saying is that I should stop using a scrap first E string as my ground wire between the pots.
Mate, you can do what you like with your own guitar.
I like that idea that it's when you open it up, it's all wired up with other bits of guitar.
I once broke down. I used to have a Mini, and me and a mate on the way to a gig, we didn't have a spare anything, and we were on the way to the gig, and the throttle cable snapped on the Mini, and we used an E string as a throttle cable to get us to the gig. And we did a paper scissors rock for whose guitar it got taken off, and I lost. So we had a throttle cable, a string coming out the vent on this Mini that was, and between us we could drive it. But I did a gig with 5 strings because of that.
I love it. I hope that story was told at the gig.
Yeah.
Hey, look, what a range of things we've talked about today, from designing and using Illustrator, which I think is brilliant, the way you talked about doing that, to naming things, to our signature style of fixing things, and fixing a car with a guitar string. I love that as an ending. So thanks again, Jamie, for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I've loved it.
And anyone watching on YouTube, there's links below to everyone's YouTube and Instagram channels, and also to the playlist, which has got all the previous episodes on and the forthcoming ones. I can only put 6 live in advance, so you'll see them. And it's important you check them at the moment if you want to join us live, because like I said, with all the time zones changing, we've got a slight shift in times for the next few weeks. And if you're listening on an audio, those links are all there as well, so you can go off and check them out. Audio, we're now 15 episodes in, I think, on our audio, so I can't say it's new anymore. But if you are listening, it still really helps if you can give like a review or a 5-star rating or something, or just tell people about it. Telling people about all of this is really helpful to try and get it out there a bit. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can join the membership. So it's not very much, it's $1.99 a month, but all of that helps pay for all of the kind of streaming services, etc., etc. I've managed to streamline the transferring it over to audio a bit more now, which is saving a bit of time, because Adobe Premiere has updated again, and now there's a way I can just literally take the audio from this, put it into Adobe Premiere, and it sorts out the sound quite quickly. So it's a much streamlined version of what I was doing before to get the audio. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you're getting the live audio, but the audio that people listen to on the podcasts, etc., has been edited a bit using Adobe Magic AI technology, which hopefully makes it a little bit clearer. I hope it does. If anyone's listening and doesn't find that, let me know, and that will help me make some adjustments maybe. Great. So
one more thing, probably a congratulations to Scott on his engagement today.
Yeah. Yes. So if you don't know, Scott, one of our regular hosts, just got engaged.
Oh, nice.
Congratulations, mate.
Yeah. I'm sure we can quiz him about it, although he might not want to talk too much about the whole situation. But I was convinced he must have been printing out his, if you've noticed last few times he's been on, his 3D printers going in the background, he's been printing out his Clone Wars armor. I was convinced he got engaged by proposing in his Clone War armor. We'll find out if that's true or not next time. Great. So thanks again, everyone, and see you all soon.
See you later.
See ya.
The Guitar Builders Collective is a group of like-minded people from all around the world at different stages of their guitar building journey. You can join us over on our forum to seek advice or share tips on guitar building processes, materials and tools, or just to share your builds. On YouTube, we have a regular podcast of guitar building chat where you can join the live stream or watch back on past episodes. Our Instagram page shares posts of members' builds and links you direct to their accounts. And for those of you on Facebook, we've got a private group that you can join, share and chat along with. The Guitar Builders Collective is a welcome and open space for all, so do pop by and say hi.